My son-in-law walked into my house and told me his parents were moving in tomorrow. I'm Samuel Thompson, 71 years old, retired pastor from Riverdale, Oregon. Ethan had been circling my property like a vulture for months. But that Tuesday morning, he finally showed his true colors. He stood in my living room, the same room where I'd raised 47 foster children, and informed me I was being relocated to assisted living. The moving truck was already booked. My belongings would be packed by strangers. His parents needed space, and I was just taking up room that belonged to real family. What Ethan didn't know was that those 47 children had grown up. They'd become doctors, judges, CEOs, and military officers, and they were about to show him exactly what happens when you threaten the man who saved their lives. I watched Ethan lay out his timeline with mathematical precision. Tuesday announcement, Friday. Packing Saturday eviction. He'd planned my exile down to the hour. That's when I reached for my phone. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened next will restore your faith that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. By Saturday morning, my quiet street looked like a Fortune 500 parking lot, and Ethan was about to get the education of his lifetime. Ethan Carter had been dismissing me for 3 years, ever since he married my daughter Sarah. From day one, he made it clear he didn't consider me real family. It's not like you're her biological father, he'd say whenever Sarah asked him to include me in family decisions. You just happened to be there when she needed someone. Just happened to be there. Like raising a traumatized 7-year-old girl for 11 years was some kind of accident. Ethan saw what he wanted to see. A simple church man driving a beat-up 2010 Toyota Camry, shopping at thrift stores, living on a pastor's salary of $45,000 a year. He saw the modest ranch house I'd called home since 1994. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, total 2,000 square feet on a quiet street in Riverdale, Oregon. What Ethan didn't see was the wall of graduation photos in my hallway. 237 pictures spanning 25 years. High school diplomas, college degrees, master's programs, medical school graduations, law school ceremonies. He walked past them every family dinner, never asking questions. "Sam, you need to think about downsizing," he'd say, eyeing my living room. "This place is too big for one person. My parents are getting older. They could really use the space." Sarah would shoot him warning looks, but Ethan never backed down. "I'm not trying to be harsh," he'd continue. "But let's be practical. You're 71. You don't need 3 bedrooms. My dad's retiring next year, and their apartment lease is up. This house would be perfect for them. Perfect for them." Like I hadn't spent 30 years making it perfect for children who had nowhere else to go. Ethan assumed my quiet responses meant weakness when I'd say, "We'll see," or "Let me think about it." He'd exchanged glances with his parents like the matter was settled. Last month, he started getting bolder. "Sarah is not even your real daughter," he said during Sunday dinner. "When you pass away, this house should go to actual family members who can appreciate it." Sarah went pale. "Ethan, stop. I'm just being realistic. Your foster dad did his good deed, but biology matters. My parents raised 3 kids of their own. They understand what real family means." That night, Sarah called me crying. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into him." "Dad." She'd been calling me that for 24 years. "Don't apologize for him, honey. You're not responsible for his choices." But Ethan wasn't finished. 2 weeks ago, he showed up unannounced with a real estate brochure. "I found you the perfect senior living community," he announced, spreading glossy photos across my kitchen table. "Golden Haven. It's only 15 minutes from the church. They have activities, meal plans, everything you need." "I'm not interested in moving, Ethan. Come on, be reasonable. You're rattling around in this big house by yourself. My parents could take over the mortgage payments, handle the maintenance. It's a win-win." I looked at those brochures for assisted living facilities, tiny studio apartments, shared dining rooms, activity schedules. Ethan saw a worn-out old man ready to fade away quietly. He had no idea he was talking to someone who'd fought battles he couldn't imagine, who'd saved lives he'd never know about, who'd built something far more valuable than he could comprehend. "I'll think about it," I said. Ethan smiled like he'd already won. That's when I knew it was time to make those phone calls, because Ethan was about to learn the difference between being alone and being surrounded by family. He was about to discover what 47 children look like when they grow up. and he was about to find out what happens when you threaten the man who saved their lives. But first, he had one more move to make. What Ethan didn't understand was that this house wasn't just my home. It was the heart of something much bigger than he could imagine. Since 1994, 47 children had walked through that front door. Some stayed for months, others for years. Every single one left knowing they were loved, wanted, and capable of greatness. The living room where Ethan wanted to put his parents' recliners, that's where Emily Sanchez did her homework every night for 4 years. She'd been placed with me at age 13 after aging out of 3 different homes. Nobody wanted a teenager with anger issues and failing grades. Last year, she finished her residency in pediatric surgery at City Children's Hospital, the kitchen where Ethan's mother planned to cook her Sunday roasts. That's where Jacob Lee learned to make pancakes at age 9. He'd come to me after his birth parents' parental rights were terminated. He was so scared of men that he hid in closets for the first month. Today, he's a federal judge in Boston. The master bedroom Ethan thought would be perfect for his parents. That's where Sophia Green recovered from the pneumonia that almost killed her at age 12. She'd been in the system since age 5, bouncing between homes, never finding anyone willing to deal with her medical needs. She's now the CEO of a tech company worth $50 million. Every room held memories Ethan couldn't see. Every corner represented a life transformed, a future saved, a child who learned they mattered. But it wasn't just about the past. This house was still active, still serving its purpose. 3 months ago, I'd received an emergency placement, 8-year-old Lily Kim, whose parents had died in a car accident. She had no relatives able to take her, and the state needed a temporary home while they searched for a permanent family. She was sleeping in what Ethan called the spare bedroom. To her, it was the first place she'd felt safe since losing her parents. If I give up this house, I thought, where does Lily go? Where do future children go when they need sanctuary? Ethan saw empty rooms that his parents could fill. I saw a lifeline that had saved 47 lives and was still saving more. The financial stakes were clear too. My 30-year mortgage was almost paid off. Only $25,000 remaining on a house now worth $350,000. Ethan's parents would essentially be getting a $4 million asset for the cost of 18 months' rent. But the real stakes went deeper than money. For 30 years, this house had been the gathering place for my family. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every graduation party, every wedding celebration, they all happened here. The kids who'd grown up and moved away still came home to this address. Last Christmas, 23 of my adult children had made the trip to Riverdale. Doctors flew in from Denver. Lawyers drove down from Chicago. Teachers came from California. The house was packed with successful adults who still called me dad, who still considered this their family home. Ethan wanted to erase all of that for his parents' convenience. There was another dimension Ethan couldn't see: my foster care license. Oregon had granted me an emergency placement license that allowed me to take children on short notice like Lily. That license was tied to this specific address, to this house that had been inspected and approved countless times over 3 decades. If I gave up the house, I'd lose the license. No more emergency placements, no more sanctuary for children who desperately needed one. Ethan was asking me to abandon my calling, shut down a 30-year mission, and displace a traumatized 8-year-old girl. Also, his parents could have a bigger living room. The emotional stakes were the heaviest of all. Sarah had been my first adoption. Her birth parents had lost custody when she was 7, and she'd spent 6 months in emergency foster care before coming to me. She'd been so damaged by neglect and abuse that she barely spoke for the first year. I'd spent 11 years proving to her that she was worthy of love, that she mattered, that someone would fight for her no matter what. Now her husband was telling her that our bond meant nothing, that blood was the only thing that counted, that I was disposable. If I backed down, if I let Ethan's dismissal stand, what would that tell Sarah? What would it tell all my children? That everything we'd built together was meaningless, that love and commitment were just temporary conveniences. The stakes weren't just about keeping a house, they were about protecting a legacy, defending a family, and proving that some things are too precious to surrender without a fight. Ethan thought he was dealing with a weak old man who'd roll over when pressured. He was about to learn how wrong he was. October 15th arrived like any other Sunday. Sarah had invited Ethan's parents over for dinner after church. and I'd prepared my usual pot roast with vegetables from my small garden behind the house. Ethan's father, Henry Carter, was a decent man, a retired insurance adjuster who'd worked 40 years for the same company. His mother, Margaret, had been a school secretary before her arthritis forced early retirement. They weren't bad people, just folks who'd raised their children to believe that biological family came first. We were sitting around my dining room table when Ethan decided to make his move. "Dad, Mom," he said, addressing his parents. "I've been talking to Sam about his housing situation." Sarah tensed immediately. She knew that tone. Ethan pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table between the mashed potatoes and green beans. "Sam's been thinking about downsizing, haven't you?" He looked at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This house is really too much for one person to manage," Ethan Sarah warned quietly. "Let me finish, honey. This affects everyone." Ethan opened the folder and spread out documents like he was presenting a business proposal. "I've done some research on senior living communities. There are several excellent options within 15 minutes of here." Henry Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Son, we never asked. You don't have to ask Dad. Family takes care of family." Ethan's voice carried that tone he used when explaining obvious things to slow people. "Sam understands the situation. He's lived here alone for 3 years since his last foster placement ended. It's time for practical decisions." I watched him lay out brochures for assisted living facilities. Golden Haven, Golden Years Community, Peaceful Meadows Retirement Village. Each one featured smiling elderly people playing chess, doing crafts, eating institutional meals in cheerful dining rooms. "The beauty of this arrangement," Ethan continued, "is that everyone benefits. Sam gets the care and social interaction he needs. You two get a beautiful home with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and no mortgage payments. The house stays in the family." He paused at that last phrase, letting it sink in. The house stays in the family. Real family, his tone implied. Sarah's fork clinked against her plate. "Ethan, we haven't discussed this." "We don't need to discuss it, sweetheart. Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions." Ethan turned to his parents. "I've already contacted Golden Haven. They have availability next month." Margaret Carter looked across the table at me with genuine concern. "Samuel, is this what you want? You've been in this house for 30 years. Before I could answer, Ethan jumped in. "He's been thinking about it for months, Mom. Haven't you?" "Sam?" His eyes dared me to contradict him. "Face facts. You're not Sarah's real father. When you're gone, this house would naturally go to her, and then to us. We're just expediting the process while everyone can benefit." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's face went white. "Ethan, how dare you? How dare I? What tell the truth?" Ethan's mask was slipping now, revealing the arrogance underneath. "I'm not trying to be cruel, but let's be realistic. Sam did a nice thing taking you in, but that doesn't make him family. Blood makes family. Biology makes family. Real parents who sacrifice for their biological children make family." Henry Carter cleared his throat. "Son, that's not Dad, please. I'm handling this." Ethan turned back to me with the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. "Sam, you raised Sarah and we're grateful, but she's married now. She has a real family to think about. My parents are getting older. They need help. You need care. It's perfect timing." I set down my fork and looked at this man who'd been sitting at my table for 3 years eating my food, celebrating holidays in my home, benefiting from my hospitality while planning to take it all away. "Ethan," I said quietly, "when you say real family, what exactly do you mean?" He blinked, surprised by the question. "I mean people who are actually related. People with shared genetics, natural family bonds." "I see. And the people in those pictures on my wall, the graduates, the wedding photos, the Christmas cards from 23 states? They're not real either. They're nice memories, Sam, but they're not family. They were temporary placements. You did your good deed, but now it's time to think practically." Sarah stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to this. Sit down, honey. Let the adults finish talking." Ethan didn't even look at her. His focus remained on me. "Sam, I've prepared the paperwork. The moving truck can be here Tuesday morning. Golden Haven is expecting you Wednesday." Clean, simple transition. The moving truck I repeated slowly. Tuesday at 9:00 a.m. I've already booked it. Ethan smiled like he'd just solved everyone's problems. 3 days should be enough time to pack what you want to keep. The furniture can stay with the house. That's when I realized Ethan hadn't just planned this conversation. He'd orchestrated the entire takeover. He'd already made decisions about my life, my home, my future, without once asking what I wanted. He'd assumed I was too old, too weak, too unimportant to resist. I signed every report card for 12 years, I said quietly. Ethan shrugged. That doesn't make you family. Blood does. I looked at this man who just dismissed 30 years of my life, 47 children I'd raised, and the love I'd poured into his wife. Then I smiled. I understand completely, Ethan. Let me make some phone calls. The slight satisfaction in Ethan's eyes told me everything I needed to know. He thought he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. After dinner, Ethan and his parents left with smug satisfaction. They'd accomplished their mission, or so they thought. The moving truck was scheduled, the assisted living facility was expecting me, and the house transfer seemed inevitable. Sarah stayed behind, pacing my living room like a caged animal. Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was planning this. Tears streamed down her face. I can't believe he said those things about you, about our family. It's not your fault, sweetheart. But it is. I married him. I brought him into our lives. And now he's trying to take away everything that matters to you. I hugged my daughter, my real daughter, adoption papers or not, and felt her shoulders shake with anger and grief. Don't worry about Ethan, I said. He doesn't understand. What do you mean? I walked to my desk and opened the bottom drawer, the one I usually kept locked. Inside were business cards, letters, photographs, and documents that Ethan had never bothered to examine. Remember Dr. Sanchez Sarah's eyes brightened slightly. Emily, of course. She lived with us for 4 years. I handed Sarah a business card. Dr. Emily Sanchez, Pediatric Surgery, City Children's Hospital. The card was expensive, thick stock, embossed lettering, the kind that announced serious professional status. She sent this last month with her Christmas card. She wanted me to have her direct number in case I ever needed anything. Family business. Who's giving you trouble? The protective edge in her voice was unmistakable. Emily had been fiercely loyal since the day she'd arrived angry and defensive at age 13. My son-in-law thinks it's time for me to move to assisted living. The silence on the other end was ominous. He thinks he's arranged everything. Moving truck. Tuesday, new apartment, Wednesday. Dad, do you want to move? Not particularly. Family business. Emily's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making life and death decisions in operating rooms. Give me his name and number. I need to have a conversation with this man. That's not necessary, Emily. I can handle Dad. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making life and death decisions in operating rooms. Give me his information and call Jacob and Sophia. This requires immediate attention. After I hung up, Sarah looked at me with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Dad, what just happened? I think Ethan's about to get an education in what real family looks like. The following Wednesday was our church's monthly potluck dinner. Community Church of Riverdale had been my spiritual home for 30 years, and these gatherings were always special to me. 40-plus members of our congregation would bring covered dishes and gather in the fellowship hall to share food and stories. Ethan knew how important these events were to me. That's exactly why he chose this moment for his most brutal attack. I was serving green bean casserole to Mrs. Peterson from the third pew when Ethan walked in with his parents. They'd never attended a church function before, but tonight they looked like they were on a mission. Ethan wore his best suit and carried a manila folder, the same folder from Sunday dinner, but thicker now. His parents flanked him like backup singers, their faces set with grim determination. Attention. Everyone. Ethan announced, his voice cutting through the friendly chatter. I have an announcement to make. The fellowship hall fell quiet. 43 people turned to look at this man who'd interrupted their meal. Pastor Anderson, who'd succeeded me after my retirement, stepped forward with concern. Ethan, is everything all right? Actually, Pastor, I'm glad you're here. This concerns the whole congregation. Ethan opened his folder with theatrical flourish. As many of you know, Sam Thompson has been living alone for several years now. At 71, he's reached the point where he needs professional care. Murmurs rippled through the room. I saw confusion on familiar faces. People who'd known me for decades, who'd watched me raise child after child, who'd never seen any sign of declining health or mental capacity. Now I know this is difficult to discuss. Ethan continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. But sometimes families have to make hard decisions. Sam's been generous with his time in his home, but it's time for real family to step up. Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught Sunday school for 40 years, raised her hand tentatively. Ethan, dear Sam seems perfectly capable of managing his own affairs. Ma'am, with respect, you see him for a few hours on Sundays. I live with this reality every day. Ethan pulled out documents, medical brochures, assisted living pamphlets, legal papers I'd never seen before. My parents need housing. Sam needs professional care. It's the perfect solution. Henry Carter shifted uncomfortably. Son, maybe this isn't the right venue. Dad, please. The church community needs to understand the situation. Ethan's voice grew stronger, more confident. He was feeding off the audience's attention. For 3 years, I've been watching Sam struggle with basic household maintenance bill, paying social isolation. He's been living in a 3-bedroom house by himself, holding on to space that could benefit a real family. That phrase again, real family. Deacon Miller, a man who'd known me since I first arrived in Riverdale, stood up slowly. Ethan, I'm confused. Sam serves on 3 church committees. He teaches Bible study every Wednesday. He volunteers at the food bank. What exactly are you seeing that we're not? Ethan smiled like a teacher addressing a slow student. Respectfully, sir, you're seeing what Sam wants you to see. The truth is, he's no longer Sarah's legal guardian. His foster care days are over. He served his purpose, and now it's time for him to step aside gracefully. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Furthermore, Ethan continued, emboldened by the shocked silence. I think it's important for everyone to understand that Sam's relationship with Sarah was always temporary. Foster care is a service, not a permanent family bond. She has a real family now. Me, my parents, and someday our children. Sam's been generous, but biological family has to come first. Sarah, who'd been silent until now, finally found her voice. Ethan, stop, please. Honey, I know this is emotional for you, but someone has to speak the truth. Ethan turned back to the congregation. I've arranged professional care for Sam at Golden Haven. My parents will take over his house, ensuring it stays within the actual family structure. The transition happens this weekend. He said it like he was announcing a church fundraiser or a bake sale. Matter of fact, already decided. No discussion necessary. Pastor Anderson looked stunned. Ethan, this seems like something that should be discussed privately. Pastor, I appreciate your concern, but sometimes private discussions don't work. Sam's been resistant to change, which is understandable. Elderly people often struggle with transitions. But I have a responsibility to my wife and my parents to make practical decisions. That's when Mrs. Henderson stood up, all 5T of her bristling with indignation. Young man, I've known Samuel Thompson for 30 years. I've watched him raise 47 children that nobody else wanted. I've seen him at hospital bedsides, graduation ceremonies, and wedding altars. Don't you dare stand in our church and tell us he's not real family to those children. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Ethan's mask slipped slightly, revealing irritation underneath. Ma'am, I understand your emotional attachment to Sam's service, but emotion doesn't change biology. Those children were temporary placement service projects. Good deeds. They've moved on with their lives. Sarah is married now. It's time for realistic decisions about the future. Deacon Miller's face was turning red. Son, you're talking about a man who's dedicated his life to children in need. Show some respect. I am showing respect. Ethan shot back, his voice rising. I'm respecting reality. I'm respecting the fact that my parents raised 3 biological children and deserve consideration. I'm respecting the fact that blood relatives should have priority over temporary arrangements. The room erupted in angry whispers. I saw faces I'd known for decades, reflecting shock, confusion, and growing anger. Ethan raised his voice above the noise. I know this is uncomfortable, but someone has to say it. Sam played a nice role in Sarah's childhood, but playtime is over. Adult responsibilities require adult decisions. The moving truck comes Saturday morning. Saturday morning. He'd moved up the timeline. Pastor Anderson tried to restore order. Ethan. I think we need to table this discussion. There's nothing to discuss, Pastor. The arrangements are made. The paperwork is signed. Sam understands that this is best for everyone. All eyes turned to me. 43 people who'd known me for 3 decades, waiting to see how I'd respond to this public humiliation. Would I fight back? Would I defend myself? Would I crumble under the weight of Ethan's accusations and assumptions? I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every year, every child I'd raised, every battle I'd fought to give broken kids a chance at life. Ethan's right about one thing, I said quietly. It's time for realistic decisions. Ethan smiled triumphantly. He thought I was surrendering. I need to make some phone calls, I continued, and I think this congregation is about to see what real family actually looks like. The smile faded from Ethan's face. Because you're right, Ethan, playtime is over. Thursday morning, my phone started ringing at 6:00 a.m. Dad, I just got off a conference call with Jacob and Sophia. Emily's voice carried the crisp efficiency of someone who'd spent years coordinating medical emergencies. We're mobilizing the family. Emily, you don't need to. Dad, stop. This isn't negotiable. Nobody, and I mean nobody, disrespects you like that and walks away clean. Over the next hour, the calls kept coming. Jacob from Boston, his federal judge authority evident even over the phone. Sophia from Silicon Valley, already coordinating logistics with CEO precision. Dr. David Patel from Denver, arranging to fly in Friday night. By noon, my quiet house had become mission control for an operation I hadn't authorized but couldn't stop. Dad. We need a full list, Emily said during her third call of the day. Everyone who's available to travel needs to know the situation. Honey, this is between Ethan and me. You all have your own lives. Our own lives. Sophia's voice cut in. She joined the call from California. Dad, you gave us our lives. Every success we've achieved started in that house, with you believing in us when nobody else would. Jacob joined the call from his D.C. office. Sophia's right. Emily, what's the timeline Ethan announced Saturday morning for the move? I'm thinking we arrive Friday evening, full family present Saturday morning. Agreed. I can get 17 people from the East Coast. Sophia, what about your numbers 12 from California and the Northwest? David's coordinating another 8 from the Midwest. I listened to my children, my real children adoption certificates, or not. Coordinate a response with military precision. These weren't the broken kids who'd come to me years ago. These were adults with power resources and unshakable loyalty. Friday afternoon, the first cars started arriving. Dr. Emily Sanchez pulled up in a silver Mercedes sedan at 3 p.m., still wearing scrubs from her morning surgery. She hugged me like she was 15 again, all professional composure melting into pure daughter love. Where is he, Dad? This Ethan character at work, I assume. Emily, you didn't have to come all the way from Portland. Portland is 2 hours. I've flown longer distances for lesser emergencies. She surveyed my house with the same analytical eyes she used in operating rooms. This place looks exactly the same. God, the memories. Judge Jacob Lee arrived 20 minutes later in a black town car with government plates. At 35, he carried himself with quiet authority that would have been unimaginable in the terrified 9-year-old who'd hidden in my closets for a month. Dad. His hug was fierce protective. I've reviewed Oregon property law on the drive ath. What Ethan's attempting has zero legal standing. You want me to shut this down with paperwork? Let's see what tomorrow brings first. By 6:00 p.m., my driveway looked like a luxury car dealership. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Tesla vehicles worth more than most people's houses. Neighbors were starting to stare. Doctor. David Patel from Denver had flown in on a private jet, arriving with his wife Jennifer and their twin daughters. Dad, the girls wanted to meet their grandfather. he explained, lifting two 8-year-olds who called me Grandpa Sam despite never having met me before. Professor Janet Richardson from Yale arrived with her husband and teenage son. Detective Lieutenant Carlos Santos drove down from Portland in his personal truck, still radiating the quiet intensity that had made him one of the department's most respected investigators. Captain Maria Gonzalez came in full dress uniform, having taken emergency leave from her Air Force base. CEO Sophia Green stepped out of a chauffeur-driven SUV, looking like she'd walked off the cover of Fortune magazine. By 8:00 p.m., 23 adults and 12 children filled my modest house. The same living room Ethan wanted for his parents' recliners now buzzed with conversation between surgeons, lawyers, professors, business executives, and military officers, but they weren't showcasing their success. They were sharing memories. Remember when Dad taught us to change oil in the driveway? Carlos laughed, pointing to the same concrete where his police truck now sat. I was 16 and convinced I'd never need to know that stuff. He made us all learn basic car maintenance. Emily added, said independence started with not depending on others for simple repairs. Jacob nodded. Same with budgeting. Every Friday night, financial literacy lessons at the kitchen table. You can't build wealth if you don't understand money, he'd say. Sophia pulled out her phone and showed photos of her corporate headquarters. Dad, I named the main conference room after you the Samuel Thompson Innovation Center. Your philosophy about believing in impossible things hangs on the wall in bronze letters. These weren't just successful adults reminiscing about their childhood. These were grateful children honoring the man who'd saved their lives, shaped their character, and given them the tools to become extraordinary. Sarah moved through the crowd in amazement. She'd known some of these siblings growing up, but seeing them as accomplished adults was overwhelming. Sophia, I can't believe you run a company worth $50 million. Sophia smiled. Dad always said we were capable of greatness. He just made us believe it ourselves. Dr. Patel examined the family photos on my walls. The same photos Ethan had dismissed as meaningless memories. Dad, you should see what happened at the hospital when I told them why I was taking emergency leave. 3 other doctors wanted to come support you. You have grandchildren all over the country who consider this house sacred ground. As the evening progressed, the conversation turned strategic. So what's the plan for tomorrow? Emily asked. Judge Lee leaned forward with the focus of someone accustomed to complex legal battles. Simple. Ethan expects to find a week-old man ready to surrender his house. Instead, he'll find 47 successful adults who consider that man their father and this house their family home. What time did he say the moving truck would arrive? Sophia asked. 9:00 a.m. Captain Gonzalez checked her watch with military precision. Perfect. We'll be in position by 8:30. Full family presence, professional attire, peaceful but unmistakable message. Carlos nodded approvingly. I like it. No threats, no drama. Just the truth standing in his driveway. The truth being, Sarah asked. That Dad didn't raise 47 children, Jacob said quietly. He raised 47 adults who protect their family. Emily stood up, surveying the room full of her siblings. Ethan wanted to know what real family looks like. Tomorrow morning, he gets his education. By 10 p.m. Most of my children had checked into hotels around town, but several insisted on staying in the house overnight. Emily took her old room. Jacob slept on the living room couch he'd claimed as his favorite spot 25 years ago, and Sophia set up a laptop in the kitchen to handle West Coast business calls. It felt like Christmas morning, except instead of opening presents, we were preparing to defend our home. As I lay in bed listening to my children's voices drifting through the house, I realized Ethan had made a fundamental miscalculation. He'd seen a lonely old man in a house too big for one person. What he'd failed to see was the heart of a family that stretched across 23 states and included doctors, judges, CEOs, professors, military officers, and law enforcement professionals who'd spent decades proving that love matters more than blood. Tomorrow morning, Ethan would learn the difference between being alone and being surrounded by family. Tomorrow morning, he'd discover what 47 successful adults look like when they stand together. Tomorrow morning, he'd find out what happens when you threaten the man who saved their lives. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear. I woke up at 5:30 to the smell of coffee and bacon. Emily was already in the kitchen cooking breakfast like she had as a teenager. Big day, Dad. You ready for this? I looked out the window at my driveway. By 8:00 a.m., the transformation was complete. 47 luxury vehicles lined both sides of Willow Lane. Mercedes sedans, BMW SUVs, Tesla Model S cars, Lexus hybrids, a fleet worth more than $4 million, creating a corridor of success leading to my front door. But the cars were just the beginning. 47 adults in professional attire stood in perfect formation across my front lawn. Dr. Emily Sanchez in her white coat with a stethoscope draped around her neck. Judge Jacob Lee in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. CEO Sophia Green in executive business attire that screamed, Fortune 500 boardroom. Military precision guided their positioning. Captain Gonzalez had organized them by profession medical professionals on the left, legal experts in the center, business executives on the right, with educators and public servants filling the gaps. Each person held a small sign with their name and title. Dr. David Patel, Chief of Orthopedic Surgery. Professor Janet Richardson, Yale Law School. Detective Lieutenant Carlos Santos, Portland PD. Major General Patricia Davis. U.S. Army Reader CEO Michael Thompson. Thompson Industries. 47 signs. 47 success stories. 47 lives that had started in the house behind them. At 8:45, neighbors began emerging from their houses. Mrs. Peterson from across the street stood on her porch in amazement. The Williams family next door gathered at their front window. Word was spreading through the neighborhood. Something extraordinary was happening at Sam Thompson's house. At 8:57, Ethan's pickup truck turned onto Willow Lane. I watched from my front window as his confident expression dissolved into confusion, then shock, then something approaching panic. He had to park 3 blocks away. The street was completely filled with luxury vehicles. Ethan walked slowly toward my house, his head swerving left and right, taking in the impossible scene. His parents followed behind him. Henry Carter clutching the lease papers for Golden Haven. Margaret Carter staring at the professional crowd with growing amazement. The moving truck rounded the corner at exactly 9:00 a.m., then stopped dead. The driver couldn't get within 200 bordiere of my house. Ethan approached the edge of my property line and stopped. 47 pairs of eyes watched him with the focused attention of people accustomed to high-stakes situations. Dr. Sanchez stepped forward, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who delivered life-changing news to thousands of families. You must be Ethan Carter. Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Who? What is this? I'm Dr. Emily Sanchez, Chief of Pediatric Surgery at City Children's Hospital. She gestured toward the crowd behind her. These are my brothers and sisters. Judge Lee stepped up beside her. Jacob Lee, Federal District Court, Boston. CEO Green joined them. Sophia Green Tech Innovations, Inc. One by one, 47 successful adults introduced themselves. Each name, each title, each achievement hitting Ethan like physical blows. Dr. Michael Chen, Cardiothoracic Surgery. Mayo Clinic. Professor Maris Davis, MIT Engineering Department. Colonel James Rodriguez, U.S. Air Force. CEO Jennifer Murphy. Murphy Construction, $300 million in annual revenue. Ethan's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror as the truth became undeniable. We understand, Emily continued, that you have some questions about our father's living situation. Your father? Ethan's voice cracked. Samuel Thompson, the man who raised us, the man who saved our lives, the man you think should be moved to assisted living so your parents can have his house. The crowd shifted slightly, a subtle movement that somehow made them appear even more formidable. Jacob Lee opened a leather portfolio. I've reviewed your proposal, Mr. Carter. Legally speaking, it's fascinating. You want to remove a competent adult from his home based on what exactly He's old. He lives alone. My parents need, your parents need. Sophia Green's CEO voice could have frozen water. Let me tell you what our father needs. He needs respect for the 30 years he spent raising society's forgotten children. He needs recognition for the 47 lives he saved. He needs acknowledgement that love and sacrifice matter more than biology. Ethan's parents had gone pale. Margaret Carter whispered to her husband, Henry, what have we done? Dr. Patel addressed Ethan's parents directly, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. I don't think you understand what your son was asking Sam to give up. This house isn't just a building. It's the heart of a family that spans the country. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every celebration happens here. This is where broken children learned they were worthy of love. We didn't know, Henry Carter stammered. Ethan said he told us Sam was alone, that he needed care. Does he look like he needs care? Professor Richardson gestured toward me as I stepped onto my front porch. I walked down to join my children, and they parted to make room for me in the center of their protective formation. Ethan, I said quietly, I believe you wanted to discuss my housing situation. Ethan looked around at the 47 successful adults surrounding him at the luxury cars lining the street at the neighbors, watching from their porches at the moving truck stranded blocks away. This is exactly what it is, Emily said firmly. This is what happens when you threaten our father. This is what real family looks like. Ethan's mouth moved soundlessly. The moving truck driver was walking toward us, clipboard in hand, looking thoroughly confused. Sir, the driver called to Ethan. We can't get to the house. Should we reschedule? Ethan looked at the driver, then at the crowd, then at me. The weight of his miscalculation was crushing him. Cancel it, he whispered. What was that? Judge Lee cupped his ear theatrically. Cancel the truck. Ethan's voice broke. Cancel everything. The transformation was complete. The confident man who demanded my house 3 days ago had been reduced to a stammering shell by the simple presence of my family. My real family. The one that mattered. The aftermath of Ethan's public humiliation spread through Riverdale like wildfire. By noon Saturday, the story was all over social media. Someone had filmed the entire confrontation, and the video went viral within hours. Foster Dad's 47 successful children defend family home hit 50,000 views in the first day. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. This is what real family looks like. Foster parents are heroes. That son-in-law got exactly what he deserved, but the consequences went far beyond internet fame. Monday morning, Ethan arrived at Carter Builders, his father-in-law's company, where he worked as a project supervisor, to find a pink slip waiting on his desk. I'm sorry, son, Henry Carter told him, his voice heavy with disappointment. After seeing what you tried to do to that good man, I can't have you representing our family business. The church renovation contract was our biggest project this year. Now they won't even return my calls. Community Church of Riverdale had indeed canceled their $250,000 renovation contract. Pastor Anderson made it clear that anyone who would publicly humiliate a respected congregation member was not welcome on church property. But the financial consequences were just the beginning. Ethan's marriage hit the rocks immediately. Sarah moved back into my house that same Saturday, taking Lily Kim with her. The 8-year-old foster placement had watched the entire confrontation from the upstairs window, and Sarah wasn't about to let her feel abandoned again. I can't be married to someone who would treat you like that, Sarah told me through tears. Ethan showed me who he really is, and I don't like what I see. Marriage counseling lasted exactly 2 sessions. Ethan spent both meetings trying to justify his actions, insisting he'd been practical and realistic about family priorities. The therapist noted his complete inability to acknowledge wrongdoing or show genuine remorse. The divorce papers were filed within 6 weeks, but perhaps the most devastating consequence was social. Ethan had lived in Riverdale his entire life, but after the confrontation, he became a pariah. The video had been viewed by everyone in town. His attempt to displace a beloved pastor and take his house made him infamous. The barbershop where he'd gotten haircuts for 20 years suddenly had no available appointments. The diner where he'd eaten lunch every Friday told him they were fully booked. Even the gas station where he'd been a regular customer for a decade treated him with cold politeness. Margaret Carter was mortified. She'd been active in the church auxiliary for 15 years, but after the potluck incident, she couldn't face her friends. The embarrassment of her son's public cruelty was too overwhelming. I raised him better than this, she told me during a tearful phone call. Henry and I are moving to Arizona to be near my sister. We can't stay here after what Ethan did. The ripple effects reached Ethan's extended family too. His brother in Phoenix cut off contact completely. His cousins in San Diego stopped inviting him to family gatherings. The annual Carter family reunion, 40 years of tradition, was canceled because nobody wanted Ethan there, but nobody wanted to officially exclude him either. 3 months later, Ethan left Riverdale entirely. He moved to Portland where nobody knew his story and tried to rebuild his life, but the video followed him everywhere. Potential employers Googled his name and found the story. Dating apps led to awkward conversations when women recognized him. Meanwhile, the positive effects for my real family were extraordinary. The viral video led to donations for our local foster care program exceeding $150,000. 3 other families in Riverdale applied for foster care licenses. Inspired by our story, Lily Kim, the 8-year-old who'd witnessed everything, started calling me Grandpa Sam. Her permanent adoption was finalized 4 months later, making her officially child number 48. And every Sunday at church, when Pastor Anderson asked for testimonies of God's faithfulness, somebody would mention the morning when 47 adults stood on my lawn to defend their father. Ethan had wanted to prove that blood makes family. Instead, he'd proven the opposite. Love makes family. Choice makes family. Sacrifice makes family. Blood is just biology. Family is everything else. 6 months later, I was working in my garden when a familiar truck pulled into my driveway. Ethan climbed out slowly, his confidence replaced by something that looked like humility. He'd lost weight, gained gray hair, and carried himself like a man who'd learned hard lessons. "Sam, could we talk?" I set down my pruning shears and looked at the man who'd once tried to take everything from me. "What's on your mind, Ethan?" "I owe you an apology, a real one." His voice shook slightly. "I was wrong about everything, about family, about you, about what matters. I let greed and pride convince me that I was entitled to something that wasn't mine. I appreciate that, Ethan. Could there ever be a chance for me to earn forgiveness from Sarah? From you." I looked at this broken man and saw what I'd always seen in damaged children who came to my door. Someone capable of redemption. Family isn't who shares your blood, Ethan. It's who chooses to stand by you even when you've made mistakes. Real forgiveness requires real change. Are you ready for that kind of work? He nodded, tears in his eyes. Then we'll see what's possible. If you're watching this, let me know what makes someone family to you.